Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. So what am I doing today? Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in March. And I'm going to be talking about the results of the Booktube Prize, which I'm really excited about. If you don't know what the Booktube Prize is, I'll explain it and then talk about why I'm excited about it. But if this is your first time here to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelly. I love books and reading and following the literary world with a lot of gusto, and a lot of that results in more reading and spending time with books and then sharing it all with you. And if you like that kind of content, if you like that kind of bent toward a channel, then I would really encourage you to subscribe. I would love to have you here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the actual video, the meat of the video, if you will. So if you don't know what the Booktube Prize is, the Booktube Prize is a literary prize ran here on Booktube, and it uses a bunch of judges to judge a bunch of books in a whole bunch of different categories. Okay, that was a lot of bunches. So there are three divisions, fiction, nonfiction, and translated fiction. And we are pitting the books against each other in groupings to see which books reign supreme and move on to the next round. And so as a judge, I signed up for nonfiction. I was assigned to six books, to read 6 books and rank them. And then out of those 6, 3 would move on. So let me tell you the books and then let me tell you how I did. The books were this. I have 2 of them right in front of me. One of them is Beloved Beast by Michelle Nijhuis. Learned how to say her name, which is very exciting. And the second one that I still have here is A Ghost in the Throat by Doireann Ghríofa. I had a moment there. The other books were this, let me tell you. The Sinner and the Saint by Kevin Birmingham. Facing the Mountain by Daniel James Brown. The Codebreaker by Isaac Walterson, and The Doctor's Blackwell by Janice P. Nimura. Okay, so let's talk about the book. Okay, so how did I do? I'm getting myself back on track. How did I do? 2 out of my top 3 moved on, which, like, ideally you want 3 out of your 3 to move on. So I did pretty well. 2 out of my 3 moved on. I'm not going to talk about the rankings of the top 3 and where they landed with me. I'm going to actually talk about the bottom 3. All right, let's get into the books that really didn't work out for me. One of them I have here, and that was Michelle Nijhuis's Beloved Beasts. So what I felt like this book was telling me it was going to be about was our roles as humans, the role that we've played in animal extinction. And I thought that every chapter was going to focus in on a specific animal, talking about I thought I was going to get maybe a description of the animal, and then the way that the animals have not been able to continue to survive and their role or their slow fading out in the world. That's kind of what I thought what the book is going to be about. That is not what the book is about. The book is about the history of conservation. It starts out with the kind of creation of conservation and the idea of conservation, going all the way back to Linnaeus, who was a famous taxonomist, very obsessed with cataloging different species. And it moves through time all the way through present day, and the way that the conservation movement in particular has taken a role in our world. I think I would be more interested in this. This would be a great book if I was writing a grant around conservation. I'm being honest. This book would be great for a student, maybe an undergraduate student, who was taking a conservation class and needed some information and some history about the history of conservation. It's kind of narrow in that it's only talking about conservation, and yet it was very broad. Like, she took you all the way through this long history. And so in that way, this book was not for me at all. And I didn't think it was super focused. There was a lot of like tell me moments, like where she's just really chronicalizing what's going on with the conservation movement, and there wasn't a lot of storytelling in it. And I really love some storytelling. I like the craft of storytelling. I want to fall in love with characters, even if the character is an animal going extinct, but I didn't really have that connection at all. I thought that her last couple of chapters was her most strong because she's talking more about the grassroots efforts of conservation in our world now, which was really, really fascinating. But other than that, the book really didn't work for me. All right, the other book that didn't work out for me was Walter Isaacson's The Codebreaker. The book, this is again another like marketing versus reality moment. I felt like the book was being marketed as a biography about Jennifer Doudna. If this was being slotted in at the library, if I were to shelve it at a library, it would be under the biography section of Jennifer Doudna, who recently won a Nobel Prize in Science for her work developing certain technologies in science. So let's start with some of the things that I enjoyed about the book. The book explored gene editing, and it specifically explored something called CRISPR, and the way that CRISPR works and how it was discovered and what it's being used for now. And she also, Doudna was really into something called RDA. Walter Isaacson does a really good job taking the reader through so that they're not lost. I wasn't lost, at least, in talking about this new science and how it was discovered and the gene editing side of it. Isaacson also brings in a really interesting conversation about ethics. And if we are allowed to edit our genes to change the tone of our skin or to change our intelligence level and to plant or edit our genes in a way that our offspring are more intelligent, what those consequences might be. Isaac Walterson has a very interesting discussion about the consequences and the moral weight of gene editing, which was really fascinating. What I didn't care for about the book was that it was basically doing too much. There was a lot of explanation about the science world. There was a ton of characters, if you will, scientists that contributed in a small way or another. And in a lot of ways, I felt like the book was a bit insincere in its topic. I thought, it's a woman in science that helped develop some technologies that we're using now to fight COVID. It's just very on the nose. It's very marketable right now. And there was something about that I didn't care for. And I also don't think that this is the end-all be-all of biographies about Jennifer Doudna. And I don't think that this will be the end-all be-all book about CRISPR or RDA. And for those reasons, I think that a better book, more concise, more focused on Jennifer Doudna's life will likely be written. And I also think that a shorter, more concise, more focused book on RDA and CRISPR will likely be written. And it wasn't Walter Isaacson's The Codebreaker. Lengthy, meandering a bit, and it felt like a bit of a cash grab, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so there was one book that did work for me that didn't move on with the Booktube Prize, and that was Kevin Birmingham's The Sinner and the Saint. And the subtitle is this: Dostoevsky and the Gentleman Murderer Who Inspired a Masterpiece. And so what this book sets out to do is to highlight the periods in Dostoevsky's life that could have shaped the writing of Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky's arguably most notable and famous novel. And Birmingham is trying to connect Crime and Punishment, the writing of Crime and Punishment, to a murderer who really actually lived, a French murderer named Nijhuis, who was murdering right before Dostoevsky would have come up with or created the character for Crime and Punishment. So he's trying to connect this real life murderer that was doing his thing and how much that murderer is so close to the main character in Crime and Punishment. Some of the things that really worked for me with The Sinner and the Saint was the discussion about Dostoevsky's life and the political and social religious movements that were going on in Russia at that time. Kevin Birmingham is really good at summarizing big ideas into and kind of condensing them down into smaller chapters or even just smaller sections in order to give the reader some idea of what Russia's people were thinking in terms of politically, and the way that they're trying to shape Russia and Russia's mindset, nationalism, politics, religion, even our existence. And Dostoevsky was a part of that. He was a bit of a rebel. He was definitely part of politics and circling around different circles. So learning about Dostoevsky and his life and about Russia was really, really fascinating. And also learning about Laneige, who was this French murderer, and kind of the backstory about Laneige was really, really interesting, and the reportings about his murder and the way that he murdered. And then Birmingham tries to sort of tie these two together. And weirdly, he disproves his thesis. His thesis is that the murderer, Laneige, influenced Crime and Punishment. And he really isn't able to connect those very, very strongly throughout the book. And so in a weird way, he almost like contradicts himself. He contradicts his own thesis. But having said that, the story of Laneige, it's shorter and more concise, and it's woven throughout the novel, or throughout the book. The story of Laneige would have read very well on its own, in my opinion, as like an article in the Atlantic or in the New Yorker. I mean, it was well done, well researched, well developed. It had a really good momentum. It was very interesting. And similarly, all of the stuff about Dostoevsky and Russia and Crime and Punishment and the discussions about Crime and Punishment was really, really interesting. It just didn't really work together. And I wonder if you would ask Birmingham, did these two pieces work together in the way that you thought? I think he would say no. And they definitely didn't work together for me. Though I liked it more than another book that did move on. But we're not talking about that. And I am not bitter. 2 out of 3 is good. 2 out of 3 is good. The Booktube Prize stuff is over. Let's just get into the things that I read. So I talked a bit about the Women's Prize this month. I think I've done 3 videos on it. I did read Elif Shafak's The Island of Missing Trees. I have a whole dedicated review to that, and I kind of have an addendum on my thoughts about that book, but I think I'm going to include that on a whole video about my Women's Prize for Fiction wrap-up kind of deal. I also, for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and because I wanted to, I picked up Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This is also long listed for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. We were supposed to read this over the course of a month, and we started my little group, which was Sandy from Miss Reads Aloud, Sonja, Devaney, and myself. We were supposed to read this starting basically a few days ago and read it through the month of April. And me and Sandy already finished, and I have like about 100 pages left. I could not put this down. There is so much about it. I have some critiques about it, but again, I think I'm gonna wait until I'm fully finished with reading this, and then I'll give you my critiques and my thoughts and my update about the Women's Prize for Fiction, because there are definitely books that I am not reading on that list. What can I say about War and Peace? War and Peace, War and Peace, War and Peace. Oh, gracious. Okay, so War and Peace is set in the 1800s in Russia, and there is a war going on with the French and with Napoleon. And we are following, as readers, the upper crust of society in War and Peace. And I would say that there are probably 6 main families that converge, and from that you're following kind of 3 main families. And then with those 3, you have about 5 or 6 main characters, and those characters converge and move in and out of one another's lives. And as the story progresses, you see how characters are brought together and forced apart. And the style of it is really interesting. The style I didn't really expect. So it's third-person omniscient, and through these scenes, scenes take place over a course of a couple of chapters, typically, at least in the first half of the book. So as you're going through a scene, you're usually following one character and their perspective and the way that they're changing and having to confront decisions. And in that way, I feel like you're really getting a sense of how people interact with one another, and the internal lives of quite a few people. And interestingly, I am really rooting for a lot of the characters. There are characters that I don't like. There are characters that I do like. And a lot of times I think that, though Tolstoy is talking about a lot, I think his main question is, will we always struggle with the thing that we're struggling with? part of me wonders if Tolstoy is asking, will we continue to struggle with the same things that we have been prone to struggle with all of our lives? And that sometimes our talents, like maybe forwardness, like if somebody is really quite a forward person, in some contexts that is such a wonderful and amazing quality to have, and then in other contexts it's not read as well, or it's taken the wrong way, or it's not a good thing. And so you see these characters kind of be themselves in different contexts and see how that shapes them and the way that other people take these characters. And so it's great. And Tolstoy, he's pretty light about things. He's light about some of the scenes. There are funny moments, sad moments. There are quite a few just absolutely hilarious moments. And I'm surprised at how attached I am to the outcomes of the characters, especially the main six. I'm following with a tremendous amount of interest. Already one character, there has been some poetic justice for them just this morning as I was reading. So I'm excited about that. It's been a really wonderful experience, and I cannot wait to finish this up. Woo! The final book I started reading was Agatha Christie's By the Pricking of My Thumb. I'm really enjoying this. This is a lot of fun. A lot of you in my comments have mentioned how excited you are that I'm starting Christie, or have just shared with me how wonderful your Agatha Christie journey has been. I am enjoying it. I'm just not spending enough time with it. I am just so distracted by other books that are capturing my attention a little more than Christie, but I can see her charm, and I can see the way that she develops characters, at least from this little snippet. I know she's got a huge body of work I can go and enjoy, but I can see the appeal. She's charming. She creates really good characters. There is really good banter in this book. And yeah, I'm excited to see how Christie and I will develop over the next couple of months. Okay guys, so that's it for me. What was your standout read for the month? So far, I think that War and Peace has been my standout read. I'm really loving Great Circle. Oh, and I did finish A Ghost in the Throat, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because Booktube Prize judge rules and all that kind of stuff. So when I can talk about it, I will talk about it. But yeah, so that is it from me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye guys.